This morning we take a break from the post-resurrection accounts of seaside barbecues, bread baking, and in-room apparitions, and we go back to chapter 5 of John to hear the story of an ill man who sat in the porticos. If you were to look up John chapter 5, verse 4 in your Bible when you got home, you'd probably realize something curious. There is no John chapter 5, verse 4 in your Bible. For whatever reason, many translations pulled the verse, but it seems like an important one to me. Namely, it tells you the rules of the pool. No running, no glass, and when an angel comes down at a certain time into the pool and stirs up the water, the first person to step in will be made well of whatever disease they have. This explains the grumbling of the ill person who says, "I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I'm making my way, someone else steps ahead of me." Whatever his illness was, try as he might for 38 years, he could never get down to the water fast enough to be the first person in. It would seem this disease would afflict him all the days of his life. But then Christ comes up to him and asks a question. Do you want to be made well? Choose which folder you want to file this question under, the questions with patently obvious answers folder, or the "this is a rhetorical question, right?" folder. But nevertheless, Jesus asks him, do you want to be made well? So maybe the question is more complicated than it seems. A prerequisite to answering yes to the question, do you want to be made well, requires us to have the humility to admit something about ourselves, namely, that I am not well. There's a part of me that's broken. There's a part of me that I can't make right by myself. It requires an implicit admission that I'm not perfect, that I mess up, and that I can't do it all by myself. And some days, it's really hard for me to admit that. Finding the grace and scraping together the humility to say, I need help, I want to be made well, sometimes that takes a lot of effort. And then there's the letting go. Part of the reason why parts of us remain broken is because we try the same way of fixing things over and over again. We say, if I just do this or I can avoid that situation, things will be fine. And they are fine until we do that thing or we find ourselves in that situation again. And try as we might for 38 years, we're never going to be the first person to wade in the pool. And even harder to admit, tomorrow won't be our lucky day when that happens either. We need something different. We need something new. Jesus doesn't help him into the pool. He simply tells him, stand up, take your mat, and walk. As if he's trying to say, stop trying the old way. Trust me to show you a new way, a way that exceeds all that we could desire, and you will be healed. Sometimes it's hard to believe. Sometimes it takes a leap of faith. And sometimes it's our only option. And if all that wasn't difficult, here's what I think is the hardest part. As we go back into the world, acknowledging that something has changed. Not just what was broken, but now what we're called to do with that burden of ours removed. At the end of this encounter, Jesus dismissed the ill man, saying, "Stand up, take your mat, and walk." But each Sunday, after our encounters with Christ, we are dismissed, being told to go in peace. Bishop Ware has this beautiful definition of peace. It's not a feeling, it's a process of removing the burden from others. He calls it the liturgy after the liturgy, the people's work out there after our work in here. That's why there's no separating the go in peace from the to love and serve the Lord. By loving not just God, but also the icons of God, those made in God's likeness and image, that is our neighbors, we go out into the world called to participate in this process of peace. Our passage ends on a strange verse. Now that day was a Sabbath day. The passage continues on with religious authorities demanding to know who healed that ill man on the Sabbath, and then they would go on to start persecuting Jesus. It's a reminder that just like peace, wellness is a process. We meet brokenness again all too quickly after healing. Nevertheless, on our good days, we do our best to participate in the process of wellness and peace, with the hope that slowly the world can heal. Slowly we admit our brokenness, and we are made well. At first, this seems like a strange gospel to read in Eastertide. With this and one more Sunday left to go, you figured we'd be scraping together all of the passages about the risen Christ and reading them before we get to Pentecost. But maybe it makes perfect sense. The risen Christ bears those dear tokens of his passion, the marks and the wounds, as a reminder to us of the messiness of this world, the strange convection of brokenness and healing, wounds and restoration, death and life. It's almost to say resurrection is a process too, not a sequential death, then life, but dying and rising over and over and over again. Right before the ascension, Christ promises us, "And lo, I am with you always to the end of the age." That's God's Easter promise, to walk alongside us in this glorious process of resurrection, committed through our humility to making things right again, committed to healing all things and making them new. The Lord is risen, wounds and all. Thanks be to God.